an ADOS dude, there was an ADOS dude named Bill something, Bill the Icon.
Bring up all the dirty laundry.
Georgia's pro-illegal immigration, liberal Democrat gubernatorial candidate Stacey Abrams may end up paying the largest ethics fine in state history. Now that's the story that I wanted to discuss. That the Georgia Ethics Commission will move ahead with the case against two groups founded by Democratic gubernatorial candidate Stacey Abrams, saying it was likely they violated campaign law by helping her first run for governor 4 years ago. The groups involved are the New Georgia Project, remember that name? A voter registration nonprofit Abrams founded in 2013, and an affiliate, the New Georgia Project Action Fund. So the commission unanimously approved on Monday a series of motions saying that reasonable grounds exist that the New Georgia Project and New Georgia Project Action Fund violated campaign finance law. Check out the story.
We're happy that the facts and evidence we've known for a while have come to light.
Ethics Commission Director David Amati is pleased the commission voted to proceed with the campaign finance case against a nonprofit organization founded by Democratic gubernatorial nominee Stacey Abrams.
We think it's good for the Georgia voters to know who's bankrolling their elections and how they're trying to influence them.
But the director of that nonprofit New Georgia Project, Francis Johnson, says this is all election year game playing. Mr. Johnson, are you saying all this is political?
I'm saying that this is off Broadway. In the smoky halls of this legislative building, a predestined conclusion was reached today.
The Ethics Commission staff filed a formal complaint that alleges the New Georgia Project and a second nonprofit linked to them raised and spent some $7 million undisclosed dollars. The staff contends some of that money was spent supporting a slate of Democratic candidates, including Stacey Abrams, during the 2018 gubernatorial election.
It's not that we are trying to hide who supports these organizations.
New Georgia Project lawyer Aria Branch argued the two nonprofits are not required by law to disclose who donated to the nonprofits or what they spent money on.
We have a different script for during the week.
But ethics staff attorney Joseph Cusack countered with a PowerPoint presentation outlining how those nonprofits canvass neighborhoods, handing out at least 170,000 flyers supporting Democratic candidates, including Abrams.
But it comes down to canvassing and electioneering and phone banking and texting and trying to influence voters.
I'll make a motion that we find that there are reasonable grounds to believe that the Campaign Finance Act was violated when
the commission seemed to agree, unanimously voting to find enough probable cause to continue the campaign finance case. A case New Georgia Project Chairman Francis Johnson says they'll be glad to battle.
This is just a preliminary hearing. We still have to go through a hearing, and we're going to fight all the way.
There's still a lot of investigation to be done in this case, and depositions soon will be taken. According to one staffer with the State Ethics Commission, this case won't wrap up until after the upcoming gubernatorial election. From the state capitol, Dale Russell, Fox 5 News.
Now, as interesting as this may be, and the fact that it's going on just prior to her second run for Georgia governor, definitely adds to the intrigue, the political theater. No doubt this is more than likely orchestrated by Brian Kemp. But that aside, while I was looking into this story, I was looking for documentation on Abrams' stance on issues such as immigration, which I find to be horrible and anti-American. I was looking for how she felt about reparations, which we will see that she is patently uninterested. I'm going to show a clip from a recent event where she was questioned. But I discovered something very interesting. And I think this is far more interesting than the fact that she may have to pay an ethics fine for election violations or violating campaign finance law. Although my intention in pointing that out is to point out possibility of larger and more nefarious misdeeds that may have been part of Ms. Abrams' plan, allegedly, but I'm not going to get into that now. Again, I found an interesting connection by a lady named Mutale Nukonde. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. She's a known antagonist of ADOS, the American Descendants of Slavery, and their movement for reparations, the online activities of its members and supporters. And I found out that she is intimately connected to Stacey Abrams via the New Georgia Project. And this is a group that Nukonde named as collaborators in her efforts to harm the ADOS movement. I'm going to let you hear her in her own words.
Basically, what we've been doing at AI for the People is really looking at those moments at the intersection of technology and racial justice. So in this last election year, the question that we posed ourselves were, Black people are the most impacted by dis and misinformation. That is the telling of stories that have a kernel of truth, but such an insidious and toxic lie that can unravel everything around that. Yet when we look at the field of political disinformation, we weren't seeing Black thought leaders, we weren't seeing Black technologists like me, we weren't seeing Black analysts, and we weren't seeing Black interventions. So what we did this last election cycle is that we followed domestic organic campaigns that were targeting specifically Black voters, and we found one in particular. Best practices in this field is that we don't repeat too much because we don't want to amplify them, and we found a hashtag which was Vote Down Ballot. And what Vote Down Ballot was attempting to do was to tell Black voters that they should not vote at the presidential level unless they were given, unless the parties met certain demands. And we found that to be a threat because this particular campaign, we're getting much airtime on CNN, but specifically on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, they were really gaining a lot of steam. So we looked at a data set of about 3.5 million tweets where we identified this hashtag, and we decided to create a counter. So really feeding off the energy of Black Voters Matter, but most specifically in an ongoing conversation with the New Georgia Project. Which is led by my dear friend Nsay Foot, not knowing that Georgia would become the center of the world very soon after. We started to think about what communications tool, given this 3.5 million data set that we had, we could see that Black voters were being targeted. What could we do to unravel this?
In addition to Nukonde's online unsuccessful attempts to stifle the ADOS movement and message, she was also the lead author of a scholarly paper, so-called, titled Disinformation Creep, ADOS and the Weaponization of Breaking News, which was published by the Harvard Kennedy School Misinformation Review. And in this paper, there were claims made against ADOS, that ADOS, as you heard Nukonde in her own words, to not vote for the Democratic Party, which is not a crime nor a bad idea, and that ADOS also downplayed the pandemic. These were some of the major points in the paper being published in the ADOS leadership, which ardently opposed the conclusions drawn by this so-called research and called for Harvard Kennedy School to retract the study, which after a long battle online and I'm sure through other channels, the Harvard Kennedy School eventually retracted the study. And what they stated in the retraction was that the external review, now keep in mind this was twice reviewed for disinformation or for scholarly ethical guidelines. It was, once ADOS made a stink about the paper, Harvard Kennedy eventually did their own research on the paper, reviewed it, and the conclusions they drew was that the external review found that Nkonde, her study failed to meet professional standards of validity and reliability. The review also stated that the conclusions drawn by the authors are supported primarily by their interpretation of a few selected tweets by ADOS leadership, and that the quantitative analysis is insufficiently connected to the conclusions of the paper. And as of now, ADOS is now suing Harvard Kennedy School for damages related to the publishing of this paper. So now, knowing the connection between Abrams and Nkonde, it helps me to understand Abrams' placid response to the question posed by ADOS Atlanta members during a recent public appearance campaign stop. And I'm going to go ahead and let you guys check that out as well.
Now it's a federal issue that needs to be legalized on the federal level. So speaking about that, we know that the Democratic Party would not have been able to get in the White House without the black vote. We literally delivered the White House to Joe Biden. So with that being said, why couldn't Warnock, yourself, and Ossoff champion the legalization of cannabis on the federal level, along with championing reparations to close the wealth gap between blacks and whites?
Sure. So I think there are two parts to that. No, you go ahead, talk for it. Look it up. Yeah.
That's what we're here for.
This goes back to my point about voting. The election of Warnock and Ossoff was absolutely essential to give Democrats the ability to appoint judges, to block bad legislation, and in certain circumstances where it is economic reconciliation, the budget bills, to pass legislation. Absent that, unless we have 60 votes, the Senate can do absolutely nothing. And I was clear about it, but the urgency of electing Warnock and Ossoff, I think, obscured the difficulty of getting more stuff done. We can champion it, but until we have 60 votes in the Senate that support it, and there have been bills introduced every single year. Cory Booker has introduced this legislation. He can't get a hearing, let alone get 60 votes. So it's not the absence of championing it, it is the structural inequity of our system that allows the filibuster that's based in racism to determine the quality of legislation that passes at the federal level. That's the problem that we have. And that's part of the challenge with reparations. Reparations requires federal action, and until we have federal legislation that can pass by either eliminating the filibuster, especially when it implicates constitutional rights, or getting a 60-plus margin, because right now we've got 60 Democrats most of the time, but we do not have 50 votes on every bill. And you have to have 60 votes again, unless it is the appointment of a judge or the confirmation of a federal official, a budget reconciliation.
Wow, what a word salad she whipped up really quickly there. You got to give it to Stacey, though. She's very shrewd. It's very close to election season, so she didn't want to brush the brother's question off. She even encouraged the crowd to join in and give the brother a hand, because that's what we're here for. Let her tell it. But her response was not the one we wanted to hear. But like I said, I got to give it to her for quickly whipping up that word salad, blaming the Democrats not being able to champion reparations due to not having 60 votes, due to the filibuster. She pulled racism, So what is it when, we know what it is, according to Democrats, when Republicans say no to reparations, it's racism. But when Democrats say no to reparations, is not racism. It's always an excuse. So, I just wanted to point that out to you all. I didn't know if you all knew the connection between Stacey Abrams, Mutale Nukande, the New Georgia Project. Nukande, in her own words, collaborated very intensely with the New Georgia Project in their efforts to stop the ADOS movement for reparations, or at least to throw a monkey wrench in the progress. And me, for myself, I have never been a Stacey Abrams proponent. I do not support her. I will not be voting for her. But I'm sure a lot of you are planning to vote for her. But if your list of asks, if your interests align with ADOS, and if you are a proponent of reparations for the American descendants of slavery, then please take note of who you are actually dealing with. You're dealing with a woman whose own organization collaborated with a known ADOS opponent, Mutale Nkonde. So keep that in mind as we move into election season. I'm not going to hold you any longer. Smash like on this video if you enjoyed the content and you want to support the channel. Subscribe to this channel as well. Share it out to your social media. This is your man online, Bill Money, signing off. I'll see you on the other side.